Good morning, warriors. Welcome to the You Movement. I am B. And today's video is in response to a question I received this morning, which was, which books do I recommend that you warriors read to assist you on your awakening path, your healing journey, however you want to describe it? So I've compiled a list of 11 of my top books in order of how profound they have been in my life. So I've read these books over decades. Not all of them have been recent years, but some of them have. Each of them have one shared commonality, which was in reading them, it made me turn a corner. It made me shift in my level of consciousness into a whole new level of awareness. Before I read this list, I want to just add on, because I don't have physical copies of every single one of these books. There was a time that I was reading on Kindle, and there was also a time that I was listening to audiobooks. And something that's come to my new level of awareness, and sorry for the thunder that you might hear in the background, we have some rainy weather happening here. But one of the things that came to my level of awareness recently, because when I escaped from my narcissistic marriage, I sought counseling from somebody who was trauma-informed and somebody who is aware of transpersonal psychology. And I'm very blessed to have a counselor that has been helping me transition through this time. And one piece of information that she shared with me that I'm going to share with you, because it really blew my mind, is in getting physical copies of books as opposed to listening via Spotify has audio recordings of a lot of books, and I was listening to a lot of books via Spotify. When you read a book, your eyes are moving in a constant left to right process. So moving your eyes from left to right is its own therapy. There is a healing modality called EMDR, which stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. Now, I personally have never gone and gotten this therapy. If you go, what it is you are following a light with your eyes while you're in a talk therapy setting. So being able to do EMDR simply by reading a book, by doing this, is helping to reset your nervous system. So before I give you my book list, I wanted to give you the recommendation that you actually get physical copies of the books. I will be doing that from this point forth because I didn't realize it's getting double the amount of healing, and I love to double up my healings when I can. You know, while I'm doing yoga, listening to solfeggio frequencies and doing small somatic movements, so that's getting 3 therapies all at the same time. So if I can get a therapy happening while I'm reading, that's just going to increase the betterment, as well as if it's helping you process. So go back to books if you have stopped reading and started to use audio, because books will really assist you in that. So to start with, I'm going to jump into my numero uno book of all times. I've bought this book probably 30 times and given it as gifts to people that I thought would utilize it. My own copy is so dog-eared and so written in and also signed, which is incredible. It was funny because when I got her to sign this, she said to me, because I've seen her speak live a couple of times, and she said to me, you can buy a new copy of this book. And I was like, oh no, I want you to sign this very, very used copy, because this is like the closest thing I have to the most profound journal work that I have done, using multiple highlighters, pens, pencils, dog-eared. It's fantastic. So without further ado, I am speaking of Anatomy of the Spirit, the 7 stages and power of The 7 Stages of Power and Healing by Carolyn Myss. So I'll show you this book again, and you can see mine is just so dog-eared and red. So this book first came into my life about 25 years ago. I discovered it, and it is what opened me up to a whole new level of consciousness and introduced me to the chakra system, which changed my life. I, from that point, was introduced into Reiki and started my journey down the path of becoming a Reiki master. And this book is one of the most profound books because Carolyn Myss's background is in theology, so she has a very vast understanding of different spiritual perspectives into spirituality. So different religious backgrounds. So it doesn't matter what religion you came from, or this has a way of saying, okay, so this is how the Christians perceive this. This is how Jewish people may perceive this. This is how the energetics is. And so she takes multiple perspectives and brings them together into one understanding of a deep, profound spiritual truths. And it goes through each of the chakras in such a way to be user-friendly for somebody that doesn't know anything about the chakra system. It goes deep into the understanding of psychological perspectives and how those are connected even to each chakra system, and sociological perspectives into each of the chakra systems. So I highly recommend that if you're starting down the path or just opening yourself up to a new level of awakening and you want to understand the chakra system a little bit more and how it affects your life on every single layer, then hop out and get yourself a copy of this. And it just the background says, Anatomy of the Spirit takes the interconnectedness of mind, body, and spirit even further than ever before. Based on 15 years of research into energy medicine, it shows that we can be responsible not only for our health, but our healing. In this breakthrough book, Dr. Carolyn Myss, who herself is able to diagnose illness by intuitive means, sets out a unique program specifically designed to promote spontaneous physical, emotional, and spiritual healing. Here she explores the links between spiritual and emotional stresses and the specific illnesses these create in specific parts of the human energy system. So, numero uno by this book. Number 2, and I don't have a copy of this one because it was on my Kindle, is The Body Keeps the Score. Brain, Mind, and the Body in the Healing of Trauma by Bessel van der Kolk. Now, this book, my body was getting worse and worse and worse, and my healing, I was vastly overweight, I had diabetes, fibromyalgia, sleep apnea. It was, I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker and deeply embedded in illness, and my body became my focus. And I read this book maybe 5-7 years ago, and it made the light bulb finally click. So my whole life I had been on a spiritual pursuit to understanding the root cause of suffering, and that led me down understanding a lot of Buddhist teachings and going into alternative spiritual perspectives. My college background is actually a native-based program. I studied Native community worker addictions counseling. So with that, I had a whole bunch of understanding the teachings of the elders, which again is a much more spiritual approach. So I'd been walking down the path of spirituality, kind of closeted version of spirituality, since I was about 18. And all the spiritual practices led me to Reiki and led me to down different paths. But there was a fundamental key that was missing in my healing journey, and that was understanding the body. And sure, I grasped mind, body, soul connection, but I didn't give body enough weight that it needed, and so give it itself its own weight. Our body puts on weight to help ground us. My body was screaming at me to pay attention to it. And when I read The Body Keeps the Score, all of a sudden, the understanding that I needed to quickly shift my focus and put it back into the body, and understanding that everything that was happening in my body was a direct relation to the trauma that I had experienced throughout my life. One of the key principles that he brought about was in how we position our body, which is what inspired me creating aligned walking for myself. And in understanding that my physical form was completely out of alignment, my feet were pointing outwards, I was crunched over, I had a hump in my back, and I was, slowly and slowly, like a creature that is, shriveling up like a potato bug. The energetics of my body was shrinking in upon itself. And he talks about how in acting we perform roles by getting into character. And as a young child, I was in a theater-based school, so it was a half a day of academics and a half a day of arts. And so I had a lot of experience on the stage. And on the stage, if you're given a certain role, body awareness is a huge part of understanding how to develop character. And in understanding how to develop character, if you're playing the role of a king or a queen, you stand royally, you stand erect, you stand tall. Where if you're playing the role of a pauper, you might be a little bit more shriveled in upon yourself. So I immediately had the understanding in reading this book that my physical form was a defeated position. I was in a position of absolute, I give up. And so when I started the mission to lose the weight and get out walking, I became hyper focused and hyper vigilant to pay attention to the positioning of my body. My feet had to become forward instead of splayed outwards. So focusing for months on end became a mindfulness meditation of, while I was out walking, feet forward, feet forward, feet forward, feet forward. And then it worked its way up to feet forward. Where are my knees? Knees bent. Put some bend in my knees, because if we have bend in our knees, we have flexibility in our lives. Our knees are our shock systems and our ability to withstand all the stresses. And then my hips, and getting hips back in location. I didn't used to be able to walk up a flight of stairs without assistance of some kind, because the pain in my low back region and down my hips and into my thighs was so extreme because of this misalignment, as well as the trauma that caused the misalignment. So then I became hyper-focused on, let's get my internal organs back to where they belong. And so instead of using Spanx or any of these types of things, because my belly was large and hanging over my pants, I started hyper-focusing on correcting the positioning, using the abdominal muscles to correct the positions and put all of my organs back into place, because I had a lot of abdominal pains. I had a lot of endometriosis, and my uterus was tilted back, which had caused a lot of additional problems. And so in focusing on trying to zip up that Pilates move of zip up the abdominal muscles, and then get the shoulders and the chest back to where it belongs. So your shoulder blades are supposed to be tucked in and down as opposed to curved up and out. This is a stance of I'm going to nervousness, where down, rolled back and down and in is relaxed. Like when a bird relaxes its wings down, it is in ability to hold everything back and in. I also spent my lifetime terrified to look in people's eyes. So I would always have my head down when I was out walking. And so learning to retrain, because if I wanted to be the main role in my life, the savior in my life, the hero in my life, I had to walk like that and create that character, create that identity for myself, and shift out of the identity of devastation and depression and all of those energies, and start to cultivate a practice of, I am the hero in my story. I am a warrior. And how does a warrior walk? A warrior walks shoulders down, pride, head up, looking straight ahead, and being mindful. And so the practice of mindful meditation, movement, walking, aligned walking, became my way to deal with what this book taught me, is getting myself into character so that the body can begin to reprogram itself as a new person, as a new being. And it took years. It did not happen overnight, because you're slowly shifting yourself out of the habitual behaviors. And as I recorrected everything in the body, the emotional traumas began to release at rapid rate. And so that's what happens on this healing journey, is this release. And so getting body as first and foremost, and understanding the connection between body and trauma became paramount, like just life changing for me. So that's number 2. Number 3, which ties very much into this one, is When the Body Says No, The Cost of Hidden Stress by Gabor Mate. And this book, another light bulb went off when I read this book, because my body knew things and understood things that my mind refused to see. When you are in a narcissistic relationship with somebody who's covert, particularly, a grandiose narcissist is a little bit more blatant in their narcissistic traits. Whereas a covert narcissist, it's so subtle and it's so sly that your mind goes into a state of cognitive dissonance. And in that state of cognitive dissonance, you can't trust your perceptions necessarily, or you second guess your perceptions, and your instincts become totally confused. So my mind was in this constant battleground between disbelief of what was happening and not understanding what was happening, because I was caught in a cycle of something that it made no sense, because what was being said to me was polar opposite of what was being done. So I couldn't understand if my husband was inept. I thought perhaps that was the cause. I thought perhaps the cause of the difficulties were his diagnosis with ADHD or ADD. He didn't have the H part. And so I kept looking and desperately trying to find answers and solutions to an abusive situation that I was trapped in, and my mind couldn't make sense of it. My body, on the other hand, did make sense of it. My body understood things that I did not. And so starting to listen to the body became huge in my becoming more and more aware of the fact that I was in a very dysfunctional situation that my body wanted out of. So when your body is like, no, pulling away from something, listen very closely to your body, because your body recognizes the stresses, and it recognizes things that your mind may not. And so I came to a point where at times I just felt physically ill. and just in a, I just don't want to be around you kind of like, I'm going to withdraw, which made me just withdraw more and more and more into isolation and into my room because I had nowhere else to go. But reading this book, and I repeat, When the Body Says No, was very paramount in helping me identify the reality that I was in when my mind was incapable of doing that, because my mind had suffered cognitive dissonance for over a decade, where two things are happening at the same time, and the gaslighting that's going on is mental fuckery at its absolute extreme. You know, I would rather get punched in the face routinely than ever be in a situation where I'm made to deal with cognitive dissonance ever again, because what it did to my mind over time is it made me start losing my memory and my ability to just remember simple things like words, like table. And so I went to the doctor with all my other health complaints, like the long list. I have a binder that I used to have, and we did an Alzheimer's test because I was forgetting basic things. And I failed that test. And so to be at the age of 47 or 48, I'm not sure how old I was at the time when I did that test, and to fail, you know, that's terrifying. To think that you might become completely and utterly mentally not there. And so narcissistic abuse is so insidious, especially the covert type of narcissism, that I didn't see the signs. My body, however, did. So I do recommend, not just for those that have suffered from narcissistic abuse, but suffered from anything. If your body is dealing with any illnesses or diseases or disturbances, or you have childhood trauma, When the Body Says No is fantastic. Gabor Mate is one of the leading people when it comes to understanding trauma psychology. So really, any of his books I really highly recommend, or any of his podcasts that you can watch is worth a listen to, anything he does. Number 4, I've talked about extensively in so many of my videos. I think that this book should be handed to every 18-year-old on their 18th birthday, is Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker, because I do believe that trauma is an epidemic globally that every person has. I don't believe that anybody has managed to get to adulthood unscathed without some form of trauma. Maybe it's mild and a little T trauma, as Gabor Mate calls it, as opposed to a big T trauma. So your little T traumas being, you fail a math test, or you fall off your bicycle, you get yelled at by a teacher, you have friends that cause conflict at school, and there's some bullying or something. And then big T traumas are your sexual abuse, your emotional abuse, psychological abuse, physical abuse, war, escaping from a country and having to move as a child, adoption, any of these types of things are much stronger trauma. So understanding, and still to this day, most counselors or psychologists don't do enough study into complex post-traumatic stress disorder. One of the first things the book says is really if the amount of people that have all kinds of other diagnoses were diagnosed correctly with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, the diagnostic manual would go down to the size of a pamphlet. So if you have even things on the autistic spectrum, or you have diagnoses of depression, anxiety, obsessive and compulsive disorder, narcissistic personality, or other personality disorders, the likelihood that you also have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or the root of it is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, is profound. So as I said, I think every human on the planet should understand understand this book because you get a background and understanding how trauma works, the 4 F's, the fawn, flight, freeze, or fight. So here's my copy of this book. Again, I have highlights all through the book, and it in chapter 8 is hugely beneficial. I look, as soon as I open it, it hops to chapter 8 because it has a chapter here called Managing Emotional Flashbacks. And if you are on an awakening path, you will be having emotional flashbacks as trauma resurfaces. So while one camp is calling it, the spiritual camp is calling it release, trauma release, what is happening is emotional flashbacks. And so understanding how to get yourself through those emotional flashbacks and deal with the anxiety and the panic and everything else that comes up. It has a lot of teachings in regards to understanding the inner critic and how it came to be, and understanding all the natural emotions that one needs to go through and process. So this is a high recommend for people for all people. Just anyone, whether you're healing or whether you're awakening or whether you're not. In fact, give it as a Christmas gift to every single member of your family. That'd go over like a lead balloon. Number 5, I don't have a copy of this book, even though I've bought probably, again, maybe 15 copies of this book and handed it out to people. I think my last copy I gave to somebody because they needed it. Is the book Trapped in the Mirror: Adult Children of Narcissists in Their Struggle for Self by Elan Golomb. Now, this book first came into my consciousness in my 20s. I would have been 26-ish, living in Toronto at the time, and I had just gone through yet another failed relationship and was in very bad way. And I started seeking counseling, and I lucked into, the universe just gave me such a blessing in regards to this particular counselor in Toronto who happened to be a specialist in personality disorders. And as I started to go and talk to him, he was the one that first diagnosed, so to speak. Not that he could technically diagnose because my mother wasn't his patient, but he was the one that said, okay, so I've been listening to you for a while and we've been dealing with this, and your mother has narcissistic personality disorder. And I was like, I don't know what that is. What is that? Because in my 20s, that brings us back to the 90s sometime, and narcissism wasn't a buzzword like it is now. Now everybody's a narcissist, which they're not. They just may have narcissistic characteristics, but the point was, he said, right, okay, you need to go get yourself a copy of this book, Trapped in the Mirror: Adult Children of Narcissists in Their Struggle for Self, and read it. And for the first time in my life, I felt in reading this book like I wasn't alone, that what was happening to me wasn't in a vacuum, wasn't this odd situation that nobody could understand, because nobody could understand it. Nobody, like, it didn't make any sense. It didn't seem logical, because again, with narcissism, to the surface, to others looking in, it may have presented like I had such a lovely life, oh, what a wonderful life you have, because I was raised in a nice neighborhood, and I had an opportunity to go to a cottage in the summers, and it was, it looked on the outside looking in that it was normal. And I was so isolated and triangulated against from family. Extended family was at a distance, so they never saw what was really happening. Neighbors, we never had interactions with neighbors. It wasn't like as much. We did at the cottage, but that's why I loved the cottage, because all of a sudden, all the stuff that would normally be happening through the year, all of the abuse stopped, because there was no cover, so to speak, unless, there was nobody up at the other cottages. So the raging stopped, a lot of the physical abuse stopped, definitely some of the other stuff stopped. And so again, there is that cognitive dissonance, because the world looks at your life like everything is normal, but when you're raised by a narcissist, nothing is normal, and nothing makes sense. And so when I got to read this book and realized that there is a real thing and it has a name and other people have experienced this and it's real, and he goes through each chapter giving examples from clients that he had seen in their stories, and reading their stories of other people that had experienced narcissistic abuse. And becoming familiar with some of the understanding of what that means and what that entails, and understanding what gaslighting is. I'd never known that before, because I was constantly being gaslit and told my reality wasn't my reality, and my feelings weren't my feelings, and my thoughts were wrong. And, understanding what a scapegoat is, and what triangulation is, and starting to develop a vocabulary for things that had happened in my life that before had nothing for me to grab onto. I used to always describe my abuse as being like gas, and that's why gaslighting is actually a good name, but not in that way, but because, or being like smoke. Like you can't, with narcissists, you can't say, oh, here's my black eye and this is my proof. It's always weird statements and weird comments that come in that are like underhanded devaluation and minimization that on the surface could appear to be kind of, I care about you, I love you, I'm doing this for your own good, wham wham, with mean and cruel things. But see, it's because I love you that I'm telling you this. So it's this again, that mental fuckery of getting two separate messages at the same time. This is for your own good. When I was getting spanked, and it was always, and when I say that I was getting spanked, I wasn't getting slight gentle taps on my buttocks. I was getting pants down handprints and welts left on my ass. And that was when I was younger. And it was always, I'm doing this for your own good. It hurts me more than it hurts you. So I'm the one getting spanked, but I'm supposed to be empathetic that this is causing you pain. See the mixed messages that come in. There's So yes, I highly recommend the book Trapped in the Mirror. Number 6 on my list is a more recent book that I got here, which is The Stormy Search for Self, A Guide to Personal Growth Through Transformational Crisis by Christina Grof and her husband Stanislav Grof. Now, those that are going through a Kundalini awakening or a spiritual awakening may want to grab themselves a copy of this, especially if they're experiencing a lot of supernatural stuff. So I know that for my awakening, that a lot of what I'm going through or have gone through, it resonates with what is known as the shamanistic initiation. I'm being initiated to be a teacher, to be a healer, to come out into the world. Not everybody will experience what I experienced. And that's a good thing. You don't want to. While I was going through my own spiritual emergencies and dealing with so what happened to me, and I'm going to give a little bit of background, but not go into too much detail, but in my desperation to speed this process along on this awakening, I sought treatments through traditional sacred plant medicines, and I have done videos on that before, as well as other treatments that open yourself up. And now I no longer recommend these treatments. I used to recommend them thinking that they were potentially good. But I suppose they served their purpose for me at the time, but I don't recommend them, because what ended up happening is I had one of these treatments in February of last year, and it opened my channels like way too wide. So any types of drugs that open your pupil, your eyes are your gateway to the soul, and so anything that dilates the pupil too much is something that opens your channel a little bit too wide, too quick. in my opinion, from my experience. And so it's kind of like turning on a very bright light in the middle of the dark, and stuff is going to come to you, like all the little bugs and moths and whatever, all come from miles around. So what you end up attracting is a lot of negative energies, negative entities, negative shadow stuff, dark stuff, souls that have been departed that haven't crossed over, and a whole bunch of other very spiritually overwhelming and terrifying experiences I went through in having to learn to manage my own energy, protect my own energy, and that's why I call it an initiation of sorts when your spiritual gifts become online, because some of them, when you have spent your lifetime repressing your gifts, and so therefore I also don't recommend alcohol if anybody is still drinking on their spiritual awakening. Alcohol is called spirits. It's called spirits for a reason, because it opens you to become inspirited, and some of what you're becoming inspirited and influenced by in the other realms is not things that you want. So quitting drinking and quitting drug use became paramount when my I gave up my last thing that I was holding on to, which was pot, and I was like, okay, nothing, no more, clean, because I don't know what's happening to me. I'm experiencing clairaudience and hearing things that I don't understand. I'm having visions of things that are so beyond overwhelming, and I'm seeing and communicating with a spirit that I don't want to experience. Learning that, and one of the most profound learnings that I needed was to stand in my own personal power and say no. This book was hugely beneficial for me to feel less crazy, less overwhelmed, less just absolutely terrified, because all the experiences, and there's so many spiritual gifts that you can become open to in a spiritual awakening. And I've always been an empath, but the clairsentience that I experienced when my spiritual awakening began got turned up full blast. So it's like I don't just sense, I feel in my physical form other people's stuff. I experience other people's stuff. I see other people's stuff. Which is another reason why isolation became huge part of my journey, because I could no longer attend like big groups and circles, healing circles, because so many traumatized people in one space. I was overwhelmed. I'd be bawling, crying, and shaking, and doing healings on myself, trying to clear the energy, clear. Like stuff would be coming up. I can remember I was at one spiritual circle, and I knew exactly what happened to that poor girl, even though she wasn't communicating it, and I had to leave, because I almost needed to vomit. And so this experience of releasing energy took over me. And so if you're on an intensive spiritual awakening and dealing with a lot of stuff in the spiritual realm that you aren't practiced at, aren't familiar with, don't have a guide, we don't have Hogwarts school to go to and sit in, I do highly recommend this book here. Okay. The next up is The Power of Now, A Guide to Spiritual Enlightenment by Eckhart Tolle. Now, I have probably read this book, I'm going to say 10 times, and each time it's as difficult as the last time. This is not a type of book, I'm going to give a little bit of a forewarning here, okay, because this is a difficult read. It was for me anyways. Maybe you find it a lot easier to read, but of all my books, this has been the most difficult read, and so I do recommend reading it, like read a paragraph and then go ponder that for a while, because not everybody had a spiritual awakening like Eckhart Tolle, the author, who apparently in a matter of 10 minutes was freed of his ego. Most of us have a lot longer and drawn out and more difficult a process of going through releasing the ego. And so this book is it's very dry because even the way he talks is quite dry. So I found it a difficult read. He's not a flowery writer, he's not like, it's not beautiful prose or anything like that, but it's hard-hitting truths that take a while to like sit with and digest and comprehend. But this fundamentally is at the very core of a spiritual awakening and learning to be in presence and to be here now. And so because of trauma, we spend an awful lot of time worrying about what was or worrying about what will be, and going over and over and being depressed about what was. And so we're not in the now, we're in the past or we're in the future, and we're bouncing back and forth between the two. And so it's very difficult for somebody who has a lot of trauma to master this. This is like mastery level on your awakening path, is if you can get yourself into a position where you are in presence, in the here and now, focused on whatever it is you're doing now, feeling safe in the now. I'm here now. I say that to myself all the time. That's one of my like constant mantras on this spiritual awakening path is I'm here now. Everything's safe now. All I need to focus on, and another one that I use is Spirit will provide what I need when I need it. I don't need to worry about that, because worrying is one of my numero uno negative flaws, that I've always been an excessive worrier, because that's been a means for me to attempt to control the outcome of situations to keep myself safe. And so a lot of people with trauma and complex post-traumatic stress disorder are dealing with predicting, always trying to predict and always trying to control. If we control the environment and predict what's going to happen, then we can feel a little bit safer and feel a little bit more grounded. And so coming back into presence is tricky, because the mind is hyper developed. It's like we have done weightlifting with one muscle, and so we've got one muscle, which is the muscle of the ego, the muscle of the mind, that is way too large in comparison to everything else. So just to give you a background, it says, to make the journey into the power now, we need to leave our analytical mind and its false created self, the ego, behind. Very difficult and challenging to do for most of us. From the very first page of this extraordinary book, we move rapidly into a significantly higher altitude where we breathe a lighter air. We become connected to the indestructible essence of our being, the eternal, ever-present one life beyond the myriad forms of life that are subject to birth and death. Although the journey is challenging, Eckhart Tolle uses simple language as an easy question and answer format to guide us. So, Power of Now, highly recommend you get that. If this one is kind of too out there for you, then the other one, which is number 8 that I recommend, is The Untethered Soul, A Journey Beyond Yourself by Michael Singer. And I have that one in audio. It also is about bringing yourself back into presence and bringing yourself back into the awareness of watching yourself, being aware that you are your consciousness is not your thoughts. Your consciousness, your soul is something bigger that is watching. So I can watch. Oh, look at me! I'm having thoughts. There I am. Oh, look at me! I'm having emotions. Oh, look at me, my physical body is doing those things. I am none of those things, but I am all of those things. So the number 8 there is The Untethered Soul, A Journey Beyond Yourself by Michael Singer. Number 9 I'm going to recommend is this gigantic textbook. So this is for people that are experiencing a Kundalini awakening and are constantly asking the question, what is happening to me? This book is the most comprehensive guide that you can possibly imagine. So the Serpent Rising, the Kundalini Compendium, and this is written by Nevan. And it is a fantastic resource that has like pictures in it. It's got the chakra system, it's got esoteric teachings, it's got yogic teachings, it's got healing teachings, it's got crystals, information on crystals, it's got mudras that you can use, and all kinds of other techniques and yogic locks. I mean, if you're going through this is like a textbook. This is the closest thing that I found to getting it, and it said this is a 17-year. The author went through their own 17-year Kundalini transformation and a journey that after a full and sustained awakening. So yes, it talks about everything you can possibly imagine, and so this has been very useful. I have definitely referred to it multiple times for all kinds of information on what's happening to the nervous system and everything else. Like, seriously, that just if you want yourself a giant guide for Kundalini, this one's it. Number 10 is a little bit funnier, not really, but anyways, Codependency for Dummies by Darlene Lancer. And if you've been following me, know that I've been trying to free myself from codependency for a while. And so I do like the Dummies series of books. I find them very useful. And this one's all highlighted and all kinds of things. I started reading this book a long time before I realized I was in a situation that I was because of that cognitive dissonance that I talked about before in regards to covert narcissism. I didn't understand what was happening to me. I didn't understand what was going on, and I needed solutions. And so I got this book, and it's fantastic because it starts giving words to things that you may be experiencing. And once you can give a name to something, it becomes real. It becomes something that you can then, okay, well, if this is the problem, then this is the solution. So this opened me up to understanding a lot of communication problems that were present in my marriage, a lot of passive aggressiveness. It gave name to a lot of other types of things that were at play in regards to characteristics of codependence and what that looks like. It's got checklists. It's an easy read. It really gets into helping you take inventory so you can see what kind of a relationship that you're in with somebody else. And so before I even was given received the confession of all the abuses, I knew that all these things were wrong. And I had finally gotten, as I said, when you have the lingo that you need that says, okay, these types of communications are not healthy, and these types of interactions are not healthy. And I came with this book. I bought a second copy of this book. I gave him a copy of this book and said, let's do this book together and save our marriage. Let's work on it. And this is the thing is, when you're in a marriage or a relationship with somebody who is a covert narcissist, they're not going to do the work. They're expert manipulators. I dragged us into counseling offices more times than not. I think we went to 5 different marital counselors. And I bought multiple copies of multiple books on, improving communication, improving your relationship. And, here, you read yours and you highlight, and I'll read mine and my highlight. Let's get together and talk about it. And and there's never any improvement. That's the crux of it, is it never ever improves because they don't want it to improve. Somebody has to be willing to do the work and put in the effort, but a covert narcissist has zero interest in doing that because they're manipulating you. It's all for show, you know. Sure, I'll go to counseling, and then they go to counseling and they re-script everything like they're the victim somehow, and you're like, but that's not what happened. That's and so it was like futile. It was absolutely futile and head-wrecking. I seriously would rather have bashed my head against a wall than tried to, as well as all the future faking. Understanding that, you know, you can learn all of these things and go to a partner and say, listen, I want to talk about how we communicate our feelings a little bit more. I want to do this, do that. And then they future fake. They say, yes, I'm going to go to counseling. Yes, I'm going to change. Yes, I'm going to work on this. And what they'll do is they'll like grab hold of a couple tools or a couple phrases that a counselor recommends. You know, like one of our counselors recommend, and something that I've used for years is, I'm processing right now to buy time. And so we'd be having a heated discussion about something, and okay, I need to think about this and I need to process, and then they never come back with an answer or a solution ever. So there's all these different tools and tricks, but if you think that you may be in a dysfunctional relationship and show some signs of codependency in a relationship, and what codependency ultimately is feeling stuck in a relationship that you'd rather leave. If you're in a relationship that you'd rather leave, but you stay there anyways, that's codependency, because otherwise you would just leave. You know, there's zero reason to stay in a dysfunctional relationship that doesn't make you happy. And on this awakening journey, you realize more and more and more, I need to go and do what's going to free me and raise my frequency. If you're trapped in a cycle of something, healing that and doing the inner work and understanding, well, what's in me? What's in me that stays? Why am I staying? Why am I here? What is in me? They're not changing. I keep trying. I keep tap dancing. I keep pleading. I keep negotiating, but nothing ever changes. And if you're in a nothing ever changes situation, then you need to come back to self and stop pleading for somebody on the outside to change. Accept radical acceptance. And that's what it came down to, is I radically accepted that nothing was ever going to change. And if I continued to stay this course, I was on a shipwreck, because it was like bailing at a boat that had a hole in it. So be aware that if you're constantly bailing at a boat, look around and make sure that nobody's drilling holes in it. And that's what it was. And then it was like, bing, I need out of this. Number 11 is in the theme of narcissistic abuse, is a more recent read, and fortunately I got it audio, but is It's Not You, Identifying and Healing from Narcissistic People by Dr. Ramani Durvasula. And I highly recommend her channel, and I highly recommend this book, although it's not something you can read all in one sitting because it's so upsetting, but it helps you process through the loss after narcissistic abuse, after you have escaped, after you've identified that you've got codependent habits and you've identified what those are, and you need to start healing and start processing through reality. Because when you have been in a state of cognitive dissonance for over a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades or 4 decades, however many years you've been doing this, and if you were in a narcissistic relationship, the likelihood is you were raised in a narcissistic situation or a traumatic situation where parents lacked the skills to raise you in a healthy way. Otherwise, you'd be out having healthy relationships. Reading this book is, again, an incredible resource, and giving you the tools that you need, giving you the information to be able to identify what things are, and learn, again, the words that you need so that you can recognize and identify these behaviors in other people. as well as, providing you with a little bit of comfort and reassurance, even though it's quite hard-hitting, that you're not alone, that there's thousands. Like, she describes narcissism as basically an epidemic in our time, because what narcissists do and the effects of narcissism is causing a health epidemic on mass proportion. And so you saw what my health was like before my marriage. I was healthy and vital. I lived in Ireland for 10 years. One of my favorite photos of my leaving just before I left Ireland was I climbed Mount Patrick, which was a mountain, and I was healthy, and I was like, yes, I'm starting a new life. I'm excited. I felt a great sense of vitality. I was coming here. I was going to build my own business as a Reiki master. I had moved home to Canada. I was like, eh. And then through a decade, through 10 years, more than 12 years, through those 12 years of living in a covert narcissist marriage, my health went and plummeted into the worst of the worst. So if you have a lot of health conditions, do look around at your environment, because nothing is in a vacuum. So It's Not You, Identifying and Healing from Narcissistic People is my 11th recommendation of books that perhaps you want to read. So that's my list, a little bit long. I hope you find some useful tools out of it. If you have any questions that you would like to ask me anything, and I can present a video to assist you on your path, whatever angle you're coming from, on your health and wellness journey, on your twin flame journey, your awakening journey, whatever journey. And if you want to book a one-on-one Zoom with me to discuss anything that is coming up that you're currently processing through, the way to do that is in the description below, as is to book a one-on-one card read, or book a distance Reiki healing session with me. Thank you again for all of the likes, the shares, the subscriptions, the comments. I absolutely adore your comments. It means so much to me that I'm able to present to you information that is resonating and helping you in your path some way. And all of us, if we can help each other as a community ascend up all those emotions and clear ourselves of all the traumas and free ourselves from all the fuckery, then the world as a whole is going to be a much safer place for our children. And wouldn't that be incredible? So if you need group support and want to join the Spiritual Warrior Support Group on Facebook, the way to do that is also in the description below. And with that said, peace out.